memories of being at the Stonewall Riots 53 years ago today, which is kind of astonishing. Who knew, right, Rich?
Right.
Who knew? Here we are. So, Pride Month 2022. What do you remember? What was it like during that time? What were you doing?
First of all, I think when you first mentioned that we would do this thing, I thought, oh my God, I've got to remember something that happened 53 years ago. I can walk in the kitchen and can't remember why I'm there. But there's certain things that you don't forget. I went online and just to refresh my memory, read a few of the articles that have been written about it. And they're all sort of basic, cut and dry. Yeah, we had a riot. Yeah, people yelled. Yeah, people went to jail. But they don't bring out, first of all, Stonewall Inn was a dump, okay? It's been raised to a holy level, but it was a dump. It was like so many of the gay bars in New York at that time was owned by the mafia. The Genovese, it had been a straight bar and a straight restaurant. The Genovese family bought it, painted it all black. Somebody went crazy with black and turned it into a gay bar. Because at that time, they could really rake in the money because they watered down the drinks. It was a mess. The bar had one escape door out the back, which was padlocked. Fire code, anybody? The bathrooms were notoriously flooding all the time, backing up. There was no running water behind the bar. Glasses were just rinsed in the same water over and over and over. They had two tubs, though. They'd splash one and then another. And then they were dried with a rag that had been used probably all day long. If you were smart and you bought a drink at the bar, which was outrageously expensive and outrageously watered down, you bought straight scotch or straight bourbon, whatever, because you hoped to God that kills some of the germs. It's a wonder we didn't all die from hepatitis at that time, but somehow we made it through. On the night that happened, my friend and roommate at that time, his name was Alan, nice Jewish boy. We had been to a function at a bar called the Telstar, or the Telstar Social Club, which was holding a retrospective of Judy Garland. Judy's funeral had just been the day before, so there was lots of gnashing of teeth and carrying on. I wasn't a particular Judy Garland fan, boo me, but we went and we hung out for a while. And then we were headed back to our house. We lived on Houston Street, right, which is like the edges of the village at that time. We were lucky to find a two-bedroom apartment because at that time in any decent building, two guys couldn't rent a one-bedroom apartment. You had to rent a two-bedroom apartment. And people, I think a lot of gay people don't really understand what life was like on that hot, and I do mean it was incredibly muggy Friday night. Life as a gay person was just one step ahead of being a leper. You had no rights. There were no TV shows about gay people. There were no, I guess when Judy Garland died, that was the last of our icons for a while there. You had no rights. You had no privileges. You could be fired for just pretending to be gay. Life was pretty miserable as a gay person at that time. But anyway, we were headed for home, and it was about a 6 blocks walk, I guess. And we started past Stonewall, and I decided to stop in and see if my little, I was kidding with Rob a few minutes ago about my number one boyfriend. But in those days, you had several, I was 27 years old. So I had a cute little boyfriend named Raphael who was a dancer at the newly formed Joffrey Ballet, which was just right around the corner. So we decided to stop in, and Alan liked the older type. And one of the things that we used to talk about at the Stonewall was it was a great place to shop because inside that bar there were businessmen in suits and ties. There were street boys. There were cute little tight buns. We didn't call them drag queens at the time. They were female impersonators or imposters, really, which is funny because at that time it was illegal to wear more than 3 female garments if you were a man. And they had when they would have their raids, they would have these, and I hate to use the term, but they
lovely ladies
that would take these guys in the back in the bathroom and check their equipment to make sure they were men. We had been through one of the raids, which was not an uncommon thing at that time. The bars got raided a lot. They were usually raided around 7 or 8 o'clock, so that the police could do their thing and keep Mayor Lindsay happy and keep the Genovese family all upset. But they got out of the way so that the bars started to fill up around 9 o'clock or so. There was no problem. So we weren't expecting any trouble that night. We just, it was a night we went in the bar. I guess we'd been there probably half an hour. And it was a usual raucous night. It was a hot, sultry night. They had air conditioners mounted in the wall, but they were still keeping it down to probably around 90 degrees. And everybody was having a great time when all of a sudden the lights came on. When the raids came, the white lights would come on and everybody would know. But this was strange because there'd never been a raid at 1:45 in the morning. That just didn't happen. That was the highlight of the bar. That's when they were making their money. And this one was different because all of a sudden they crashed through the front door. One of the things you don't understand when you read these stories is the noise, the screaming, the yelling. The Nelly Queens went completely wild. And the pushing, the shoving. It wasn't a polite raid. It was a rough raid. I got grabbed by the big burly cop. I got away from him and I was headed out the front door when I got grabbed by another one. And at that time, I was 27 years old and feisty and about 3/4 drunk and didn't really want to be grabbed, not by a cop anyway. So I pushed back. Well, that really pissed him off. So the next thing you know, he whacks me with his nightstick, a bruise I carried around for a couple of weeks. I got away from him because one of the drag queens jumped on him from behind and ripped him back away from me. So I pulled away and got out front. When I got out front, I was amazed at the number of people in the street. That's always a busy street on a Friday and Saturday night, but not that many people out there. There were 2 paddy wagons, which you don't usually see one, or the smaller ones if they had them. And they had a second layer of police officers waiting outside. My friend Alan got away. He came out too. We finally met up. I don't know what happened to Raphael that night. We never found him, but it was noisy. There was lots of screaming, yelling, carrying on. And yes, it turned into an actual riot. Somebody who led the group decided that we should go around the corner and come up behind the police officers. So, yay, we'll do this, okay? And we had gotten sort of swept up in all this. This seemed to be the thing to do, Partly it was exciting and partly it was just fun to raise some hell. Like most people there, I think I was just sick and tired of being treated like a second-class citizen. And it just didn't sit well with me. So around the corner we all go, and they split up, and we come back around, and this scared the police officers and the people they were holding, and they ran back inside the bar. There was lots of screaming, yelling, carrying on, and somebody decided to set fire to the bar. And it's like, holy shit, can't be, you know. But yeah, they did. They set fire to the front of the bar. Well, that called the fire trucks, who amazingly got there in something like 2 minutes. It was amazing. It's almost like they were waiting around the corner. They put out the fire, and we stormed the bar, and the police officers stormed out. And that started the real riot, screaming, yelling. One of the ladies of the night got upset because they were rough handling her, and her handcuffs were too tight. And as she started screaming about that, that just sort of was the thing that set the crowd off. And we started calling them coppers. And then for some reason, we threw pennies at them, you know. That was the thing to do. And it turned into a full stage riot. Lots of fighting, screaming, pushing, shoving. People were crying. But most everybody was just pissed. I mean, really, really mad. We had had it. That was enough. And this went on until around 5 o'clock in the morning. It was a long turmoil fight. We would push them. They would push us. We'd push them. They'd push us. And finally, we just all I think we just gave out as the sun started to come up. And Al and I went home, nursed our wounds, got on with life. But that night, it was Saturday night, and it was like, let's go back. We went back, and the street was absolutely mobbed with people. And that's the real riot that people don't talk about, was the Saturday night riot. Screaming, yelling, pushing, fighting. This went on for 6 nights until the mayor, Lindsay, published a sort of a offhanded apology, and things quieted down. But the whole thing lingered in New York for months. And shortly after that, we had our first gay pride parade. Wasn't really much of a parade. There weren't any floats, just a bunch of us guys holding signs and marching down the street. But it was a night to remember, even when you're 80 years old. I don't think I would ever really forget it, but until I was sort of waylaid by illness and old age, I was pretty much a person who stood up for himself and for my people, for what that sounds like. But I didn't like being treated like a leper. I was not a secondhand person. I was not a second-rate person. I was a real person. And over the years, I've always been that way. I was part of ACT UP. I was part of, I marched in Chicago like a real thing. I helped found Chicago House. I've always fought for the rights of gay people. Don't do much now because basically you stay inside and hide from the heat, but that's pretty much my story.
I'm in awe. It's just amazing, amazing. I'm so glad you remember, and thank you so much for sharing today. I feel like I'm there almost. I mean, I could just really picture everything you were talking about, and just kind of overwhelmed by how intense that must have been, and how life-changing it must have been for probably everybody there.
Well, nobody really expected that to become a turning point, you know. It just was one of those nights when stuff happened. Mm-hmm. And it got out of hand, but in the long run, it established a starting point.
Yeah.
And that's what we needed at that time. I think I think gays all over the country had pretty much had it by that time. The only place that it wasn't illegal to be gay was Indiana. I don't know why that was, but yes, it was illegal to be a gay person. So people had gotten tired of being illegal for no real reason other than how you feel.
Anybody have anything you want to ask or comment?
I did find Raphael 3 days later.
And you reconnected after 3 days.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask a question, Richard, if I can. I know very little about Stonewall. I'm aware of the significance of it, but I know very little in terms of detail. So thank you for sharing. I mean, I'm having images just like Rob is saying. I'm reliving it as you're telling the Genevieves are owning this property and then becoming a gay point of focus for the gay culture in New York. But after Stonewall, has there been any other movement, perhaps not in the same type of nature, physical and violent, but what other turning point would you cite that would be similar, if at all, to Stonewall since 1969 or whenever the Stonewall happened?
Well, there's nothing that'll probably relate to Stonewall and the level of activity of that night, except when AIDS came along. There were, I won't use the term riots, there were uprisings in various cities after Stonewall. There were people who, I know there was a lot of activity in Los Angeles and Chicago after Stonewall, but I think the real turning point again was when AIDS came, and the administration at that time totally ignored it. The Reagans just pushed it away. The Republican Party just had nothing to do with it. And we had to form groups like ACT UP. And ACT UP was not a quiet group, believe me. We raised more hell than anybody should know. But it got the word out that there was something that was killing our friends. Long before we ever knew what it was, we just knew it was something that was killing our friends. So I think that was the second go around that really stirred people up. And fortunately, that has stayed with us. I mean, we still fight for that.
And in the future, beyond your time, perhaps, or all of our times, what would you like to see happen other than the obvious, getting rights and having legislation that takes care of us the same way as our counterparts? In a utopian world, what would you like to see happen?
I would like to see the term same-sex marriage done away with. Just call it marriage, okay? It's two people who love each other. That's it. That's really all that matters. There are people that are always going to hate us. Donald Trump stirred up most of them. We know they're there. But I just want to be accepted, not tolerated, okay? I hate it. People say, we're very tolerant in our church. I don't want to talk to you if your church is tolerant. I want to be accepted. And I think I think if any gay person, if they ever wanted to just narrow it down to one thing, would be just accept me for who I am. I moved out here in 1992 because we came out here for vacation, and it was even though 1992 and today don't recognize each other at all when we came out here. We felt accepted here. We had been accepted in Chicago because we were wealthy white people as a couple. Rich and I were wealthy white people, so we were accepted. We lived on the north side. We went to all the right places, and we were very involved. I owned a bar. So we were accepted there, but we weren't accepted throughout the city. Out here, everybody seemed to be cool. Nobody cared that you were gay. This is cool. And we came out here, I think it was the third time we came out here to visit. We came out for Christmas holidays because I had just really had it with snow. God knows, does Chicago get snow? And on the way back, I turned to Rich and I said, you know, let's move out here. And yeah, right, sure, okay, this is just what we need, okay? Give up everything and moved out to this freaking place in the desert. By the time we got to Chicago, we had not only talked ourselves into it, we had made plans. I sold the bar. Rich sold his business. I quit my job at Northwestern Hospital, and we put the condo on the market. And I guess it took us about 90 days. We got this big check from the bank and got in the cars and drove out here, and we've been here ever since.
30 years in Palm Springs. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Great. Well, that's a really fascinating story. So, Miguel, do you have something you want to?
I do. Something that you said over and over, Rich, was that you felt like a second-class citizen, and no one should ever feel that way. The question I have is, did you ever stop feeling that way? And if you did, when was that?
I don't think I ever really, maybe I phrased that wrong. I never really felt that I was a second-class citizen. I got tired of people treating me like I was a second-class citizen. So I never really got over it. This is just who I am. Take it or leave it, you know? And if you have a problem with me, that's your problem, not mine.
You know, the problem ends up is when their problem, they make it your problem.
And yeah, don't get in my way.
Exactly. And that's the hard part about being gay, I think, too, is like even in the Coachella Valley in the desert here, most people are pretty accepting, but it's like we're still always on our toes. We never know when the person that's going to come along is going to treat us badly. So we kind of always kind of have our radar up. We're always on alert. We're always, trying to be careful. And that's not good. The thing that's good is that it's less here than most parts of the country. So definitely it's a good place to live. And we're not even on the, the tourism board recommending people to move here. But it is a way better than average environment in which.
Well, that's like in Chicago. On the north side of Chicago, it's called Boys Town for a reason. Everybody, I would say probably the north side of Chicago is probably equally divided, straights and gays. And everybody gets along, and everybody goes to the same bars, straight people. When we had our bar in the afternoon, we were probably 50-50, straights and gays. As the night wore on, the straights went home and the gays filled the bar. Thank God, because they drink more and they tip better. But in Chicago, if you go to the south side, it changes. Just like any place else. There are places where you can be accepted, and there are places where you can be tolerated, and then there are places that are just going to kick your ass. And you have to be wise to know the difference. And like you said, you have to watch your back. It's like I live in a senior development here, but I don't have a gay sticker on my car because I live with people that are my age, and these are straight people, and they're not tolerant of anything that's different. I actually see people in my neighborhood here who have Trump stickers on their car. So I'm not foolish enough to go around and parade and say I'm gay. I just say, leave me alone.
Yeah, we still have to be careful. Anybody else have a comment or question?
Yeah, I do.
Mike?
Rich, I want to thank you personally and your whole generation for setting it up so the rest of us could carry on and keep going and do our work, standing on your shoulders, so that we can be in the place where we are today. And young people today don't even, it's not a thing. It's just not even a thing.
Right.
You're gay, so what? You know, it's just not even a thing. And that's thanks to your generation that stood up first. You know, I was an ACT UP
Thank
member
you for
too, watching
realizing-
all that.
Thank you for realizing that.
Oh, absolutely.
Most gays today just sort of take it for granted, you know. Oh, it's
Yeah.
cool, you know. They don't stop and think of what it was like 50 years ago, 60 years ago.
40 years ago, 30 years ago.
Right. And there are places that haven't changed to this day. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. We were a kick-ass bunch, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Thank goodness, we all benefit.
It sounds like it. When you were telling the story about the raid, the only thing, the image that came, first of all, I was 3 years old when that happened, so I was a toddler.
Screw you. That's a terrible thing to say.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I cannot even imagine what that was like. So the way my mind works is very visual. And the only thing, when you were telling that story, I don't know if anyone's ever saw Victor Victoria with Julie Andrews, and there was that one scene where the bar gets raided and there's major pandemonium going on, and that is what, when you were telling that story about that the police came in and the lights came on and the fight started and the screaming and the yelling, that's just the way that I can almost visualize what's going on. Although Victor Victoria was in the 30s or 40s, so I'm sure the outfits were a lot different, but because this was in '69 when this happened. But I again, as Michael says, thank you, because it's so nice to hear it from someone that was there and that lived it. And to your point, Rich, you're like, oh, I was just there. I was just like a bystander. I was just watching this. But it is so much more impactful when you hear it from someone's mouth versus reading it on the internet or watching it on TV. It just makes it that much more real. So thank you.
It was funny too, because it was totally unexpected, because like I said, the raids were always in the early evening so that the bars could then continue their business. There had never been a 1:45 in the morning raid. So nobody really knew what was happening for the first few minutes. The lights came on, some queen screamed, and that started the whole thing, and there's just a lot of milling around. The cops didn't just come bursting right through the door. The lights came on and we all got, what the hell is this, Then the cops came in. But when they came in this time, they didn't walk in like they usually did at the raids. They burst in. And that scared everybody. And that set off, I think the way they did the entry set off the whole idea of what was going to happen. It was going to be ugly whether you liked it or not.
So was there a sense that it was planned intentionally to be that confrontation?
Not that night. No, not at that time. Later, we read in the papers and we, heard through the gay grapevine that this was a raid that Mayor Lindsay was backing. Because he was pissed off at one of the Genovese brothers. Can't remember which one it was. There were three of them, but this was their big money maker. They own several. In fact, they own most all the bars. I think except Julius, which is still running to this day, the longest running bar in the world. Gay bar is Julius's, but. He was trying to strike at the Genovese brothers. He was trying to break the hold they had on the gay bars. The Genovese family owned most of the bars in the village. Another mafia family, I can't remember which one it was, owned most of the gay bars on the north side of town. And those were the fun bars.
So it's sounding like it was not really an anti-gay thing as much as an anti-crime thing.
It was politically based.
Yeah, but still, you know, with all the continual raids by the city, it's like a bully who just pushes you, and finally you just snap. You just
Oh, that was pretty obvious that night because they weren't expecting all hell to break loose and a bunch of queens to say no more. This is enough, because they had to call in reinforcements. We had they had really set off a fire. They lit a match, and I don't know if you've ever been around a bunch of screaming queens, but it can be nasty.
Well, like you said, some people crying, some people hysterical, some people angry, just the whole mix of what a mob is, because everybody's experiencing it in their own unique way. But the whole
there was this one little queen that was standing near me when it all happened. she really just, the poor thing just really broke down the minute the lights came on. Oh no, we're going to get raided. And which was a surprising remark because nobody's expecting a raid. We just didn't have raids at that hour of the morning. But I still remember that poor old soul. I think this is probably her first time she'd ever been there. Cute little thing, but she didn't want to be part of that.
Well, I can imagine if you're in the closet and all of a sudden you're on the front page of the paper kind of a thing, that's a huge, scary thing for more than a few people.
Well, Stonewall drew a strange crowd. On any given night, you would have men in business suits, you'd have drag queens or female imposters. You had the street kids that came in, get off the street. Stonewall was actually listed as a private club. You had to sign to get in and pay a fee. I think it was 50 cents or something like that. And most people used fake names. It was funny because one night we were there, we ran into Truman Capote, a name you probably guys don't remember, but he was a regular there. So you saw all kinds of people. In fact, one of the ways that the mafia made money was blackmailing a lot of the more affluent crowd that came in there. They would out these people or you paid up the money. Excuse me. So they had several ways of making money off that place. I lost my point, but that's, like I said, there were all kinds of people in there on any given night, especially on a Friday night. And a lot of people to this day still think that the Judy Garland thing had a lot to do with it, because a lot of gay people were really gnashing and tearing their clothing over the death of Judy Garland. I mean, this was like the most horrible thing could possibly happen, you know. So there was a lot of tension about that too. So, and there's been several articles written about it, that's what set it all off. But I think it was just a combination of things. People were fed up. There was stress. There was strife. It was hot. God knows it was hot that night. And the kind of muggy that only a city can be, you know. There's no breeze or no air. This was city time. But here again, the cops, I don't think were expecting a fight. Surprise.
I remember that summer so vividly. I was 9 years old, but boy, do I remember it well. And you're right, I remember that riot going on for days. And it was getting so much news coverage. I mean, all over the TV news, all over the print news. I mean, it was like what New York was all about for that time period.
Yeah, it went on for 6 days, 6 nights.
Yeah, and the funeral parlor where Judy Garland was in wake was in my neighborhood, and my mom and I my mom took my brothers and I to go see her. Of course, we never got in because the lines were just, for blocks and blocks. But we did want to pay our respects. And my dad knew members of the Genovese family, and my dad hated Mayor Lindsay with a passion. The Genovese family also owned a chain of drugstores at the time. And my dad was in retail sales, so he knew, actually my dad knew a lot of mafia people, thinking back on it. But of course, he had his commentary because he knew the family that owned the place and he hated Mayor Lindsay. So my dad was very vocal about that. And yeah, we also landed on the moon that summer. It was quite a summer. But
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize it, that at that time, New York City was basically run by the mafia.
yeah.
City Hall was mafia infested. There were 3 strong families, the Genovese being one of the leaders of the group. And I don't know if Lindsay was trying to break the hold or if he was just pissed off. But there were several more things that happened around that time that between Lindsay and the mafia families. I didn't follow much of it then, but I was living in the village and I was living the life I wanted to live at that time.
Well, that would be an interesting topic to read the history of New York and all the politics, because it was definitely an intense time. And, that was the era of Vietnam protests too.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, it was it was the 60s. It was all about upheaval. I was thinking when I was looking through stuff this week too, I saw a photograph of a big crowd in New York with a kid holding up a sign that just said Gay Liberation 1970, which would have been probably the following summer. Gay liberation, the term liberation was used a lot. We had women's liberation, we had Black liberation, we had Latin American liberation. There were all these liberation movements. There's liberation philosophy, theology, and all the rest. It was all about liberation, about setting free of all of the old stuff that didn't work for the culture anymore, and people were rebelling all over the place. And this is just one of those many pieces. And so look at how much we've changed from those ridiculous laws about not wearing clothing of a certain type. I mean, we are so much better off in areas like that. But that doesn't mean we're done. There's still a lot more to do. There's still no federal law that prevents people from firing you just because you're gay. That's still a thing. There's laws all over the country. So we've got more work to do. But, well, let's wrap up our time. Rich, do you have one more thing to share before we close?
No, I was just remembering when you said clothes, my roommate Alan at the time, he had actually been attacked and beaten up by a Puerto Rican gang because he wore a pink shirt. And guys just didn't wear pink at that time. But he was going, I don't remember where he was going. He was going somewhere in the neighborhood. But then he took a train and went north for something else. I don't remember the whole thing. But you were safe walking around the village, but you didn't go north in a pink shirt. Yeah, the more we talk about it, the more things keep coming back to me.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Well, it's those little snippets to tell you about what life was like then compared to how it is now. So we'll continue the conversation, but thanks for today. Thank you, Rich, so much. I mean, that was really incredible. I really appreciate you sharing with us.
Yes, thank you, Rich.
Thank you.